Underwriting for the following program has been provided by Paul's Jewelry.
Good evening, I'm Diane Morton, and tonight I have MarcelleBienvenu, who is a food writer. And Marcelle, I'm so excited to have you. I consider it a privilege to have you on our show.
Well, it's a pleasure being with you.
And I'd like to ask some questions because I'd like to tell the viewers tonight we're going to discuss memories and holiday cooking. And you were telling me when we had our coffee visit about your Christmas and the food that you would have growing up in St. Martinville. Would you tell us about some of the tradition that you had on both sides of your family?
Yes, unlike a lot of people, we never did anything Christmas Eve night because we all had to get ready to go to midnight mass. But I do remember that whenever we'd come back from midnight mass, which was 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, Mother would put her stuffed pork roast in the oven, and of course you'd start smelling it during the morning hours. Of course, it was always ready when we got up at 7, 8 o'clock. And we usually had our meal mid-afternoon because we'd have time to open gifts, have all the aunts, uncles, cousins, and we had a lot to come by and say hello or stay for dinner. And we not only had a turkey, we always had a pork roast. We had 2 kinds of rice dressing. We had sweet potatoes, patate douce. We had 2 or 3 desserts. So it was the whole day was, of course, eating. We do that every day, but more so on Christmas Day.
And you told me about New Year's.
Well, New Year's, I think everybody in this part of the country, or maybe everywhere else, they eat the cabbage, the black-eyed peas. And what we would do when we were younger, we'd go with Mother and Father, and we'd visit different people's houses and have a little bit of cabbage and a little bit of black-eyed peas at everybody's house before we ended up at our house to have our version of it. So I guess the more that we ate, the richer we were going to be, or whatever the things were. But that's what we did. Spent another whole day eating and seeing people.
But tell me, I thought this was a very interesting point of each side of the family, that sometimes wasn't it at Christmas that y'all would go visit where the farm food on one side of the family and the
my
other?
father was one of 12 children, and they lived in town in St. Martinville. My mother was one of 5 children, and they lived in the country. So I had the best of both worlds. We had city food, if you call St. Martinville a city, and we had country food. In the country, of course, we had all the fresh vegetables. We had milk from the cows. We had eggs. We had homemade butter. We always had biscuits or cornbread. We had, it was just a different kind of food. We always had good food. In town, as we were talking earlier, back then that was when you could afford to go home for lunch. So you might imagine my poor grandmother having 12 children sometimes home for lunch. Some, of course, were gone by then. But there was always platters and platters of everything from fried chicken to pork roast to soups. So their stoves literally never got cold. So I was very fortunate. I had both worlds.
Right, and I love the tradition that you told me about Easter down at the camp, and I'd love for our viewers to hear the story I adored more than almost any you told me was of the hat.
Well, yeah.
The hats, rather, with the flowers.
For years, I guess since the 50s, we've spent most Easter weekends in Catahoula, which is a little fishing village near the levee. And we'd go there on Thursdays after school and stay till Sunday or Monday. But even better than the little hat store, which I'll go back to, I remember I told you on Good Friday, the Catholic Church says you can have only one large meal because it's Good Friday. And the ladies in Catahoula make what they call a tatabouille, a little sweet dough pie. And they would start making them and start eating them at lunchtime, and they'd make their meal last till 3 o'clock till the time of the services in the afternoon, because they said, nobody said how long that one meal could last. It could last for hours.
I love that.
And then on Saturdays, we spent almost all day dyeing eggs and getting ready for Easter Sunday. But also on the day before Easter, and of course Easter morning, Daddy would challenge us to decorate our Easter bonnets with either wildflowers or flowers that we had. So we even had, used to tie the little clovers together.
Right.
So we'd make little crowns for our hats. And we'd have our own Easter parade. And we thought that was just the cat's meow.
And about your mother, wasn't it the big flowers that she would have on her hat?
But we used to laugh. If the lilies were blooming at that time, she'd always have these big lilies all over. And then I don't know if my baby brother Bruce may have either gotten tired of her lilies or whatever, but one Easter we got there and he had mowed them down, supposedly by accident. So we had not much to choose from that year, but we always had decorated bonnets. We always did.
I think that is so adorable.
I still try to do that to this day.
Do you, like to this day, do you have, I've spoken of this before on other shows, but I particularly want to mention again on this show with you of the memories, like to this day when you smell pork roast stuff.
I think of Sunday.
Do you think of
Christmas Day. And also, whenever I think of frying chicken, which is what we used to have on Easter Sunday. And of course, frying chicken outdoors. I think all food prepared outdoor sometimes smells better and tastes better. I don't know what it is.
I do. I think
or if we didn't have fried chicken, it was a barbecue. And I think all those smells are wonderful. Also, today being during Lent, during the day at lunchtime, if I go through St. Martinville, you can smell fish frying or shrimp stew cooking or those kind of, and it just brings you into a time. And also, I think about Sunday dinners. We're still lucky. We still have Sunday dinners because we have such a big family. And there used to be a thing in the family that there was always a baked chicken on Sunday, even if you had something else. It was like you couldn't have a Sunday pass without having a baked chicken on hand. So, yeah, there's a lot of things that you connect with
the memories. Like I was telling you, with my grandfather being born and reared in St. Martinville, that I find it so interesting that he and his sister, my great aunt, their whole lives, as I was, as I was telling you, that they grew up with the big meal. Everybody would come home, even the husbands working, and the children from school, of course, close by there, the schools to where they lived.
Yeah, they could come home.
And they would come home, and I grew up, even though I was born and reared in Shreveport, I grew up with my grandparents, and that tradition carried on all Grandpa's life, that he and my grandma would have the main meal, and I was close enough to walk home, and everybody would come, and then in the evening, like I told you, my grandfather's standard and my great aunt was fig preserves, French bread, and the butter.
Right.
And I find it so interesting and sad in a way, because we have, in our modern society, it's rare for children or the husbands
to come home.
I'll
let you come and visit my sister's house. Because still in the afternoons when some of the children come home from school, she will have syrup, butter, and bread. That's their afternoon treat. So it still happens. It may not be the same exactly like it used to be.
Well, as I was telling you, my grandpa believed syrup was magic.
It is magic.
He believed it would cure, I don't know how many ills, and we always teased Grandpa. Even in Shreveport, he had to have his steam syrup.
Well, I still get a letter from letters from people in Shreveport who said that there are magical traits of Steens. I eat my Steens as often as I can.
Well,
I justify
I guess I'm a trader. I like the maple flavor, and my grandpa would be horrified if I wanted anything but Steen,
Well, I still eat Steens, and I love it. I love it on anything.
And tell me about, like, you were mentioning the 4th of July, or we were, about, now not every family celebrates, maybe, for the
4th of July was kind of special for us. Daddy's birthday was around the 4th of July. And, of course, we were back at the camp. Sometimes we'd go to Cimarron Point. And, again, it was the day that everybody came. We had flags. We used to march around. It kind of reminded me of Christmas caroling. Instead of Christmas songs, we would march around with our flag and sing all the patriotic songs and pick people up along the way. And there was never really any set menu, but we had a lot. We had fried chicken a lot, and Daddy always cooked it outside. And I think more than anything, it was just the getting together that was so important. And the 4th of July during the summer, being during the summer, I guess because we wouldn't maybe see some of the other cousins as much during the summer. The 4th of July was always a time to get together.
That was, like I said, even though I grew up in Shreveport too, I always think of family, you know, and the cousins, and we would all sometimes go on a picnic all together to the lake and so forth. And I think it's real nice, don't you? I think of Norman Rockwell. It was his paintings, you know, in the flag, you know, of family we still do. And you mentioned, and I was delighted, as I have a lot of people on our shows, of how lucky we are in South Louisiana.
We are.
With the family emphasis on family, you know, much more so, I think, even
it wasn't until I got out of college and realized that a lot of people don't have as much of that family unit. And I think that even today, I think that our family, at least, I'm sure a lot of other families in the area, still are able to get together for a lot of holidays and still have that core of family life. And plus, it was our entertainment. You know, we entertained ourselves.
We did not have all this of the outside.
Right. We entertained ourselves with the. I have like 51 first cousins. I was never bored. And I mean, when I hear people, children say they're bored, I go, why are they bored? But we all, you can tell by what I look like. We always ate and had a good time, and food was part of the entertainment, I suppose.
Well, I think it's a wonderful thing. Like I'm saying, with my grandma was from Lake Charles, so there's a lot of that, you know, almost same heritage over there on family. And growing up with them, what I loved, and still to this day at my age, that just, you know, the warm memories come of my grandma. Like you said, there was always food cooking. I woke up with the coffee being brewed. My grandpa would not hear of bought coffee, of course. And my grandpa had the bean, how do you pronounce that? He would have it where you
had to grind it?
You would grind it, and it was on the wall.
Oh, I remember those,
you know? Right. And so he would, all my life growing up, I woke up to the fabulous smell of Grandpa or Grandma, you know, grinding the beans. I would wake up in that is the most delicious thing in this world, you know. And so they would have their French coffee. And I would be, allowed to have a little bit as I grew, you know. But the food was always on the stove.
I know.
I never remember walking in my grandma and grandpa's house without the smell of cooking. Delicious smell.
I know.
But not only that, it was like always open house, Marcelle. It was that way where you know, where you grew up.
Yeah.
It was always people coming in for dinner, you know, my uncle's friends, and as I grew, my friends. It was like an open house, not just New Year's, but it was
all the time.
All the time of food and cakes and pies for everybody. And I think it's a wonderful way, you know.
Yeah, and I hope that people realize that it's very important, no matter where we live, that our children have those memories, or at least continue the traditions. I was at a symposium about a month ago, and it was the American table. And I hope that, at least in this area, that a Big Mac or whatever is not going to be what our children and their children eat. I hope they do maintain the recipes of the gumbos and the bouillabaisses and the courtillons and the fried fishes and the étouffées, and because I think it's such an integral part of our lives.
I feel, but you know, when you're young, I'm excusing myself, when you're young, you perhaps don't realize, or things are not as valuable, because I had my great aunt. And I had my grandparents, and I never thought to write down, you know, like recipes passed down. And my great aunt in Lake Charles, my husband's from Lake Charles, and, you know, and that's where we met. And even though I was visiting from Shreveport when we met on a weekend of mutual friends. And so when I would go down and visit and stay at my great aunt, she would cook for my husband. So to this day, we tease that I won him through my great aunt's cooking. Yes, because he said,
well, it is important.
It's just fun.
I always urge people, or mothers or grandmothers, to start collecting little family things and putting them in, even if you Xerox them and put them in little binders. I never forget, I had an Aunt T. It was Mama's Aunt T. She was my great aunt. Had a place, a little restaurant in Laurelville, and she was known worldwide for her etouffees and bread puddings. And as she got older, and I guess practically near her death, we were saying, we can't let her die until we get her recipes.
Oh, well,
and we did. Yes. We do have some of it. But I urge people that even if it's just a simple thing like fried chicken, or a favorite cake, or just anything, and people should give those to their children as a little Christmas gift or as a birthday gift, even if it's 10 recipes.
Right, it's but I just didn't, it never ever dawned on me of how valuable and how precious are those recipes that can be had. And I am so thrilled that you're doing your writing, and you were telling me how, not changing the subject because this is the same thing, of how at the beginning of, or was it at the beginning or along the way, that you were asked about Southern cooking and how it was narrowed down, like the publishers up in
when I was,
York,
this was almost 20 years, well, it is 20 years ago. I was a very small child. Now I was working for Time Life Books, and they were going to put the Acadian Creole cooking in a section in a book called The South.
Yes.
So when they sent somebody here to do some research, they really thought it would be like a chapter. And it was a friend of mine who was working in the same project was originally from Baton Rouge, and she kept saying, I'm telling you, there's enough to do a whole book. And eventually did a whole book. And as I've done more and more writing and more speaking, and I'm working on a book now in New York, I still think that people have a real the cuisine is very still mysterious, and they can't quite put their finger on what makes it so wonderful down here. And I always say it just has a heart and a soul and a character unlike anywhere else. And not saying that there aren't other places that have regional cooking. It's just that I think that the people in South Louisiana, or in Louisiana, just have a real deep reverence, if you will, for the food that they cook and they eat. I always say they have a 24-hour-a-day love affair with their food.
Well, I always blame my overweight on that. I grew up with my grandparents loving cooking, and it was such an important part. Like on the weekends, what cakes and pies shall we have this weekend?
Well, you would start at lunch talking about supper and what you were going to have on Friday, what were you going to have on Sunday. And it's just, if they're not eating about it, if they're not eating it, they're talking about it, or they're fixing it, or they're worrying about what are they going to have. And what's astounding to me as I work with people not from this area is that when they figure out that our ingredients are very, very simple ingredients, and it's just the different treatment of the different things that makes such our cuisine have this heart and soul that I think it does.
Marcelle, are you like me? I know this sounds critical, and I don't mean to be. It's just that it's a very fascinating thing to me of different people from other states. It seems to me, in other words, that some view food as to eat to stay alive. In other words, like it's necessary to eat your body. But down here, like it's so much like what you said.
Daddy's motto was, it's best to eat to live, live to eat than to eat to live. And it's true.
It's just, it's just so different.
Well, there's
from
a lot
the way
of people that are very ambivalent,
up.
very indifferent about their food.
Right. Yes. What for breakfast? Who cares? Like, or lunch or something. And whereas with us, it's with me. Like I said, with my it was a very vital, very important part of life. You see,
even when I go to New Orleans to work, sometimes I think of all the different things you can have for breakfast. You can have beignets, you can have café au lait, you can have. Then for lunch you could go a gamut from anything from a lucky dog to a wonderful meal at Commander's Palace. Or there's just. If you just stand at a corner in the French Quarter and look around, there's 10 places to eat within a given 100 feet. So it's always, I think it's an exciting I'm very lucky. I feel very fortunate that I live in South Louisiana. And I'm glad, no offense, I hope there's nobody here from Utah. Wonder what they eat in Utah. But I'm really glad that we live here. I've enjoyed being involved in food. I've had a good time doing it. You can tell.
Well, I love it. I love to talk about it. Like you said, I love to think about it and so forth. But time is going down, and I do want to mention that it's so exciting, the different columns that you write for, you know, New Orleans and Lake Charles and Shreveport and the newspaper Times here. And so I would like to just go a little bit into your background. I've just enjoyed meeting you so much. You know, you're everything that I thought. You have a fabulous personality, and you know everything about cooking. But I wanted to ask, what person or persons was the most influential as you grew for your character, your values in life? You know?
My father, I think I may have mentioned that we've been in the newspaper family for newspaper business for over 100 years, and I think I got my wit, if I have that, or my storytelling from my father, who was a newspaper editor. And he was a Boy Scout leader. I think I told you that too. And he loved to cook. I went along. I thought I was a little boy for a long time because we'd go on hikes together, and he would teach us to cook. My mother has a love of cooking also, but I'll tell you who really urged me in the direction that I ended up, because I really didn't mean to be a journalist nor be involved in food. And Ella Brennan and I became friends about 20-something years ago, and she urged me to write about it or do some travel and food writing. And she's the one that got me really interested in food in New Orleans. So I guess all that together has got me where I am now. I didn't mean to do any of this. But it wasn't planned.
It's wonderful
So,
that you do.
I've been very fortunate.
And I like so much when you told me, when we had coffee, of living in your little cottage on the bayou, you and your husband, and having your office in the back. As we get ready to close, I wonder if you could tell, I love the story I was telling my husband, but I've forgotten which color of flag that you put up for your neighborhood children in your office in the backyard, so to speak, of your cottage.
My husband, Rock, built me a little office in the back. It's not connected to the house. It's in the backyard, as is his little workshop. And now that I'm home more doing work at the house, kids in the neighborhood have discovered I'm home. And so there's a little child, 5-year-old next door, and as soon as she gets off the bus from kindergarten, she comes take off to visit me. So now the rule is if she sees a red flag, she can't come in.
Okay.
She sees a green flag, she can knock. And the other kids have understood that, because it's really wonderful to have an office in your yard. You can go in your robe. You don't have to get dressed all the time. I think it's fabulous.
I think that's the greatest thing I ever heard of. Want some more coffee or so forth, just pad in your house.
Where we are is very isolated, so there's not too many people. Of course, the postman has caught me a couple of times, but I hope he doesn't tell.
I had the colors wrong. I think I told you I'm red or white, but I had that wrong.
They figured it out. But
I think that is such a cute thing. And you told me how your fireplace in your home is right there, looking at the bayou.
Right on the bayou, overlooking the bayou. So we're real lucky. It's a very small house, but we're very comfortable there.
It sounds like a dream, Marcelle. It sounds like a fabulous dream that you can ride in your own backyard. And yet you have your home there on the bayou. That just sounds so nice.
We enjoy it. It's a very small cottage, I call it, and our neighbors always tease us that we can clean it with a dustbuster in 20 minutes. That's how small it is.
I think it's fabulous. A friend of mine was asking me about you, being on the show, and wanted to know if you were still working in New Orleans, and I said you were going back and forth. Isn't that correct? That you have stay in down there some during the week, and maybe and go.
Yeah, I have a test kitchen in an apartment downtown, in New Orleans, and I'm working on a project with Emerald Lagasse, a chef in New Orleans, and we're doing a book called Louisiana Real and Rustic. So it's going to be. We play like we were Charles Corral on the road, and Went all over Louisiana, and I came back with all kinds of good things I think that we'll have in the book. It'll be out in October, so it's been a lot of fun.
Well, I think it's, I don't mean to say the word envy. I'm happy for you, but I think it sounds like a marvelous, marvelous thing, the way you've combined your love of cooking and your ancestry, to make it so interesting this way. My friend today was asking and saying, and I told you, and I thought it was very, very complimentary. She said, I love Marcelle's recipes, but I love her stories.
Well,
also,
a lot of people just read the stories and they don't use the recipes, but that's okay. Just use it as you can.
Right. Well, I've enjoyed having you.
Well, it's been a pleasure. I've enjoyed it.
It's been real exciting to have you and to talk to you about, with my roots, with my grandparents down in St. Martinville. So thank you. And you at home, I'm so glad you joined us tonight. Join us next week at the same time. Good night.
Underwriting for this program was provided by Paul's Jewelry.